When Caroline Leavitt walked into the Fox News studio shortly after the death of Pope Francis, people expected a sharp political interview from the White House press secretary. But things changed quickly. Sean Hannity tried to keep things light. But Caroline didn't go along. She sat quietly staring at an old envelope with a red Vatican wax seal on the table. And that moment turned everything around. From a normal interview, it became something unexpected, a live revelation of a secret that had been hidden for a long time, and her final words hinted at something that could change how people think about faith, power, and hidden truths. Under the bright studio lights, the crowd applauded Caroline as she entered with a confident smile. Though her eyes looked uneasy as she glanced at the envelope, she took her seat and gripped her hands tightly. Hannity introduced her and began with his usual charm, asking if she would give a new political take or something more. The crowd laughed, but Caroline didn't join. She took a deep breath and said she wasn't there to talk politics, but because of a promise she made to Pope Francis the studio. When quiet, Hannity asked about the promise, and Caroline explained that the Pope had given her a secret, and that night she would finally reveal. The envelope on the table seemed to draw all eyes as Caroline sat still, locked in thought. Hannity leaned in, asking what really happened between her and the Pope. She said it started with a handwritten letter delivered by a priest while she was in Rome with President Trump's team. The note asked her to meet the Pope privately at Casa Santa Marta at midnight. She thought it was a mistake, but something about the letter made her go. A black car picked her up and drove her through quiet streets to a hidden gate in the Vatican, where another priest led her to a small room. There Pope Francis sat in a simple white cassock, looking tired, but his eyes were kind. He greeted her and said he had heard her speak about faith and freedom and felt it came from the heart. They talked not about politics, but about the church and its struggles. He said being Pope wasn't about glory, but a burden that sometimes he felt silence, not from God, but from those around him. He spoke of shadows within the church, people pretending to be faithful while chasing power and money. Then he told her he needed someone from outside the church to speak the truth, and he chose her. He gave her the envelope sealed with red wax and told her to open it only after he was gone. He placed a hand on her shoulder and said faith is not about having answers, but having the courage to ask questions. Caroline left the meeting with the envelope in her bag, feeling unsure why he had chosen her. She didn't open out of respect for his request, but when he passed away, she knew she couldn't stay silent anymore. She looked into the camera and said she was ready to fulfill the mission he gave her. Hannity asked why she decided to speak out now, and she explained that after the trip she started receiving strange notes warning her to stay silent. The notes appeared in her purse, under hotel doors, and in her mail, all without explanation. She felt watched and feared for her safety, but didn't report it because she was afraid people wouldn't believe her or that someone would take the envelope away. She hid it in a safe, but it felt like a ticking bomb. Then one night, she had a vivid dream. She stood alone in a vast marble hall, and Pope Francis appeared wearing a plain gray cloak. He told her she must choose between staying safe and speaking the truth. He reminded her of a childhood memory when she prayed for light in a church, and told her now she must carry that light. Even if darkness followed her, she didn't know if it was just a dream or something more, but it pushed her to act. In the days after that, she noticed changes around her. Her team acted concerned. A journalist hinted at a Vatican connection, and she felt caught in a web of mystery. But the real reason she decided to speak was the moment she saw news of the Pope's death. She felt a deep emptiness, and knew staying quiet would betray not only him but herself. She gently touched the envelope on the table, ready at last to reveal what was inside. Seal, I brought the envelope here tonight because I couldn't live with the silence any longer. He chose me not because I'm strong or smart, but because he believed I would dare to speak. When the time came, Hannity nodded and said, that time is now. She agreed, her eyes fixed on him, and said yes. But before I open this envelope, I need everyone to understand that what I'm about to reveal isn't just about the Pope. It's about all of us. The studio went completely quiet, like everyone was holding their breath. Sean Hannity leaned in and asked Caroline about the secret meeting, the threatening notes, and the dream. Then he asked why she chose this moment to speak. She looked at the envelope, her fingers running over it, and said it wasn't one moment, but thousands of little ones that made her realize she couldn't stay silent anymore. She talked about how after Pope Francis died, it felt like a door slammed shut, and how watching his funeral made her feel like she was letting him down. That envelope wasn't just paper, it was his trust in her, but she had been scared of what it contained and what it might cost her. She explained how being the White House press secretary meant daily briefings and constant pressure, but the anonymous threats kept coming. One in her briefcase, one on Her windshield all saying stay silent or lose everything. She began to suspect everyone, even her husband, who noticed she was acting differently. But she couldn't explain it. Hannity interrupted and asked if she ever thought about just locking the envelope away and forgetting about it. Caroline said she thought about it every day because she had a baby, a husband who trusted her, and a career she worked hard for. Opening the envelope might ruin all of that, but she remembered what the Pope told her that he chose her not for her bravery, but because he believed she'd find strength when it mattered. Then one morning, everything changed. While feeding her son, a package arrived. No name, no return address, just a brown envelope. Inside was a typed note saying the time has come. Speak, or the truth dies with him, and a small silver cross like the one her grandmother used where she knew she couldn't wait any longer. The studio stayed silent as she said she thought of her family, the risks, and the people who still found hope and faith. And she realized she couldn't stay silent anymore. She chose live television because it was the only place no one could edit her words. She told her team she would do an interview, but didn't say why they thought it was about policy, but only she knew the truth. Hannity asked if she was afraid, and she admitted she was still scared, but fear wasn't a reason to break a promise. She remembered the Pope in that quiet room trusting her with something he couldn't carry, and she knew that if she didn't speak, she would regret it forever. She sat straight, placed the envelope between them, and said she had prayed for courage, not answers, and felt her grandmother's voice telling her to be strong, and felt the Pope pushing her forward. She said she wasn't here to be a hero, but because someone who carried the world asked her to carry a piece of it, and she would keep her word. Hannity asked what she would do next, and she said this wasn't just about what was inside the envelope, but about what happens when people stop running from the truth. She lifted the envelope, cut the red wax seal with a small knife from her grandmother, and the sound of the seal breaking echoed through the studio. She pulled out a thin sheet of paper with the Pope's handwriting and read it aloud, saying he wrote to her because he believed the church was being destroyed from the inside, not with weapons, but with lies and fake smiles, and that there was someone who would make faith disappear through emptiness. He told her to speak, because truth was the only light left. Hannity asked if she was saying the Pope foresaw a specific villain, but she didn't answer right away, and instead pulled another note from the envelope written in shaky handwriting, and said he mentioned a group called S-Nam men who claimed to want to save the church but might destroy it. She pulled out a small black USB drive that had been sent to her home without a note, and said it confirmed what the Pope warned about. Hannity asked what the video showed, and the screen behind her lit up, showing grainy footage of 4 men in black robes whispering in a candlelit stone room, talking about dark pools and secret deals, and one of them said they needed to act before a cardinal found out. The video ended suddenly, and the audience gasped. Hannity asked if she was sure it was real, and she said she wasn't, but the message it came with said the Namian lives, and an FBI friend confirmed the footage was real and unedited but couldn't be traced. She said someone wanted her to see it, and now she wanted the world to see it. She told the audience the Pope wasn't just warning about a single person, but about a whole system of people who use faith for control, and said he chose her because she was outside the church and could speak when he couldn't. Then her phone buzzed on the table. A message flashed on the screen, and she glanced at it. Her face briefly turned pale, but she quickly regained her composure. Hannity noticed and immediately asked if everything was okay and what just happened. Caroline picked up the phone and read aloud, saying you've gone too far, so Namian is watching, and told him she had just received it. Her voice trembled slightly, but she stayed strong, holding the screen up to the camera as the audience buzzed. She said, they know I'm speaking, and I won't stop. Hannity tried to keep control, but his voice was a little shaky as he warned her that she was putting herself in danger, and asked if it was worth it. She looked directly at him, her eyes fierce, saying if she stayed silent, then everything he fought for would mean nothing. And she was speaking not just for him, but for those who still believe in good, even when the world tried to destroy it. Social media lit up with posts calling her crazy or a hero and asking what the Vatican was hiding. Some audience members clapped, but many stayed silent, overwhelmed by what they were seeing. Caroline placed an envelope and a USB drive on the table, declaring this is just the beginning, and said the truth is a flame, and she wouldn't let it die. Hannity seemed unsure of how to proceed for the first time in his career, and he looked at Caroline, then turned to the audience, saying they needed a moment to process, and asked if she had anything else to share. She shook her head slightly with steady eyes, saying she wasn't done yet and needed to show them one more thing. She pulled a small photograph from her pocket, holding it face down as the studio became quiet again. Suddenly, there was a strange noise backstage, like glass shattering, and the audience murmured in fear. Some standing and looking around. Caroline, still standing, held the face-down photo, her gaze firm with a hint of worry. The envelope and USB on the table seemed to be at the center of something big. Hannity, trying to stay calm, asked if she knew what was happening and what the photo was. Caroline took a breath and said she didn't know who was out there, but she knew they didn't want her to continue. And that was why she raised the photo still face down, saying it wasn't just a picture, but proof she wasn't alone the night. She met the Pope. Hannity, confused, asked if it was connected to Snamman or something else, and signaled security. While keeping his eyes on her, she nodded, saying she received the photo in the mail with no note or return address, and it was taken tonight. She met the Pope at Casa Santa Marta. She flipped the photo, showing him. First it was blurry, but showed Caroline and the Pope in a stone hallway lit by a lamp with a cloaked figure in the background, hiding behind a pillar of the audience. Buzz, trying to see better, Hannity squinted, asking if the figure was a witness or stalker, and Caroline placed the photo on the table, keeping it from the camera, saying she didn't know, but this wasn't the only time she had received such a photo. She got 3 others over the years, each from different sources, and the same cloaked figure appeared each time, once in Rome, once in D.C., and once outside her home in New Hampshire. She pulled out more photos, pointed to each, showing the same figure, and said she hired a private investigator, but found nothing, no fingerprints, no lead. Someone wanted her to know they were watching, but not who they were. Hannity, shaken, asked if she thought the figure was Snamman or the Pope's enemy, and Caroline said she thought they were linked to both, and remembered the Pope saying she would see darkness before light, and that the figure could be part of Snamman or someone against him. But what she was sure was they knew about the envelope, and what she revealed, she pointed to the first photo, saying that night she thought it was just her and the Pope, but someone else was there watching and taking pictures, and if they did it, then they could be there now. Her words caused the audience to look around nervously. Hannity asked if she thought they were in danger right now, and she shrugged, saying she didn't know, but truth always came with risk, and she brought the photo to prove what the Pope told her wasn't fiction, and that someone didn't want out. She faced the audience, telling them she wasn't asking for a blind belief, but asked why someone would try so hard to silence her. If there was nothing to hide, then another noise came from backstage, like metal hitting, and the audience gasped. Some screaming. Hannity signaled security again, but Caroline stood still, saying they were trying to scare her, but she had made a promise and would keep it. Hannity asked if she should stop for safety, but she shook her head, saying stopping would mean letting them win, and she wasn't just speaking for herself, but for those who never got to speak. And if she stopped, who would she? Held up the photo for the camera, letting everyone see the cloaked figure, saying this was why the Pope chose her, because she wasn't part of the church and not bound by its rules, and she could show what they try to hide. Social media exploded with questions about the figure and whether she was being hunted. Some called her brave, others thought she was seeking fame. She seemed unfazed and sat down, her eyes fixed on Hannity, saying she didn't expect everyone to believe her, but hoped they would ask questions, and if there was nothing to hide, why silence her? Hannity asked if this would affect her job or how the White House or a president would react, and she looked uneasy for the first time, saying she hadn't told the White House anything, and they thought she came to talk policy. But once the show ended, her phone would ring nonstop, and she might lose trust or her job. But she wasn't doing it for her career. She imagined stepping out of the studio, facing reporters who would ask for proof, or if she regretted it, and she would answer no, because if she didn't speak, then who would? Just then a staffer whispered something to Hannity, and he said a group of unidentified people were outside demanding to see her, and security was holding them back, asking if she wanted pause, but she refused, saying pausing was what they wanted, and she would speak even if she had 1 minute left. She held up the photo again, saying the envelope, the video, and the pictures were only the surface, and the Pope saw a bigger threat, not just to the church, but to all people, and she wouldn't let it be buried. The audience clapped, but some hesitated. One woman shouted she's telling the truth, while another whispered this was too much. Caroline ignored them and looked into the camera, saying she wasn't asking to be protected, only to be heard, because the truth didn't need her to live, would find a way with or without her. Hannity asked what she would do next, and she said she would go home, hug her son, tell her husband she did the right thing. But she knew the night wouldn't be peaceful, and showed her phone again with a new message, saying his naming does not forgive you, chose the wrong side. She read aloud, steady, but the audience could feel the danger. She set the phone down and said they thought she would be afraid, but her grandmother taught her that faith meant standing firm when everything falls apart, and she wouldn't run. Then security shouted from backstage, and Hannity stood, saying they might have to end the show because things were getting out of control. She stood too still, holding the photo, and said, let them come. She said what needed to be said, and this wasn't the end, but the star of fight. They all had to face the audience, was split, some clapping hard, others shaking their heads. Twitter overflowed with clips of her and the photo, and the noise backstage, some calling her a hero, others saying it was a stunt. Caroline looked at Hannity, showing she was ready for whatever came, and said she didn't know what was waiting, but she knew she kept her promise, and that was All that mattered Hannity didn't know what to say. He looked at her, then at the audience, and told them they had just witnessed something historic. "Moment, Caroline, thank you, and be careful." She nodded, her eyes fixed on the camera like she was sending one last message to the world. Truth is hard, but it is worth fighting for. The audience had just watched Caroline Leavitt reveal Pope Francis's secrets using a video and a photo of mysterious figures. Some people clapped, while others just stared. Many seemed shocked, and silent. Caroline stood strong, holding the photo like it was a flag of truth. Sean Hannity looked tense as he tried to end the show. In the middle of the chaos, he told her, "You got the world's attention. But with everything happening, what will you do next?" Caroline looked right at him, her heart beating fast. But her voice calm and clear, she said, "I'll keep going, not because I want, but because after the Pope saw something I did in a bigger fight. And I'm only starting." She stepped off the stage as the lights faded and security surrounded her. The audience stood. Some shouted, "Caroline, don't give up." She didn't turn around. She just held the photo like it was a guide. Outside, sirens screamed and voices from a crowd filled the air. On social media, people posted clips of her holding the warning. One person wrote, "She just challenged the power. We can't see brave or crazy." Someone else said, "Protect her." When Caroline got home in D.C., it was late. The moonlight came to the curtains as she sat on her couch checking her phone. There were messages from reporters, co-workers, and numbers she didn't recognize. One message had no sender. "And read this. Nominee is not the enemy. Find us where the light begins." Caroline felt a chill and remembered what the Pope said in her dream. "You'll see darkness before the light." She wondered if Esnaman was trying to help or trick her. The next morning, she found a package at her door. There was no name on it. Inside was a wooden rosary smelling faintly like the church she remembered from childhood, and a note saying, "Son, naming lives go where the flame is." Lit, she held the rosary and felt like her grandmother was with her, whispering, "Don't be afraid, little one." The flame could mean the Vatican or another strange place tied to the Pope, but continuing would mean danger for her family. She stood in front of a mirror, seeing not the small-town girl from New Hampshire, but someone with a big mission. Her phone rang. A White House advisor said, "The president wants to meet you. What you said caused a lot of problems. Please explain." She hung up without answering, knowing the meeting could save her job or force her to stay quiet. She heard a car slowly pass her window, its lights flashing across her wall. Someone was out there watching like the figure in the photo. She sat at the table writing a letter to her son in case she didn't come back, saying, "Mom did this so you could live in a world where truth matters. Forgive me if I was wrong." She put the letter in a safe with a Vatican envelope, then looked at the night sky and whispered, "I promise him," and I'll finish it. She put on her coat, took the rosary, and went to the door. Outside, a cold wind blew, and at the corner a figure stood wearing a cloak under the streetlight. She didn't know if it was a friend or an enemy, but she didn't stop walking. Online, people kept guessing whose son Namin really was. Were they trying to change things or cause harm? Someone wrote, "Caroline Leavitt just opened Pandora's box. Pray for her in the darkness." She walked holding the rosary tightly, her heart full of fire and fear. She didn't know where she was going, maybe to the Vatican or a secret church, or maybe to meet this mysterious group. But she knew every step was her way of saying the truth matters, even if she falls. A figure in the distance seemed to call her, and Caroline, full of courage and doubt, stepped into a journey. No one could predict the ending of her brave act. Exposing the Pope's secrets shows the deep struggles in America today, where power and fear often try to hide the truth. Her facing threats are hidden. Figure and pressure from leaders shows how people, especially journalists and whistleblowers, are punished for speaking out or opening the envelope. And showing the Vatican's secret proves how free speech is important in America, but also shows how costly truth can be. She risked her safety, her job, and the trust of others. Her dream about the Pope and childhood prayers reminds us of the role of faith and family values still important in many American lives, like in her New Hampshire community. Her choice to keep going even though someone is watching her shows a strong spirit, the same one found in the American dream. The message is clear: speak the truth, but be ready for what comes next. In a world where social media can lift you up or tear you down, you need to stand on what matters most, like Caroline did for her son and others around her, and always protect the ones you love. Truth is a flame worth keeping alive, but it takes strength to make sure it doesn't burn you down. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to follow the next chapter of Caroline and Esnaman's mystery in the upcoming video.